Hi everybody, it's Mr. Clements. We're going to talk a little bit today about the age of Thomas Jefferson. So when Jefferson takes office after the election of 1800, he wanted a very quiet inauguration. Jefferson was not very showy, and one of his criticisms of John Adams and the Federalist Party in general was that they were a little bit too pompous and a little bit too showy, and he really wanted his presidency to represent the common man. So he did not ride a carriage into the Capitol. He walked into the Capitol. His speech was very, very quiet. Jefferson wasn't known for being a great public speaker. He did come from a very family, but he really believed that the nation's strength came from its ordinary, everyday people. Remember the example that we used when we were talking about the first two political parties, where Jefferson argued that if you gave a plowman and a professor the same problem, the plowman would usually come to a better conclusion than the professor did. He really wanted the nation to turn into a new direction from where it had been going with the Federalist Party, and he considered his to be something of a revolution. It was a peaceful revolution, not like the American Revolution with lots of bloodshed and stuff. So he called it the Revolution of 1800, and he was really just kind of rejecting a lot of the Federalist ideals. He wanted to make the country more democratic. He was known to have a very democratic style. He was very unassuming. He did not bow when he met people for the first time. He preferred to shake hands. He dressed very unassumingly and just kind of very plain Jane. It was said that if you came to the White House, there was a really good chance that when you knocked on the door, Jefferson himself was going to be the one to open the door. And there was a real good chance he wasn't going to be wearing shoes. It was just kind of a very, like I said, what they call a democratic style. Now, when he took office, he did make several changes. Jefferson believed that the government's job was to protect the rights of its citizens and not much else. He really wanted to decrease the size of the government's departments, especially within the executive branch, that he felt like were already too big even after only two presidents, Washington and John Adams. With the approval of Congress, he reduced the size of the Army and reduced the size of the Navy. The Navy had been built up a lot with frigates, these fast-moving gunships, when they thought they were going to go to war with France, following the XYZ affair and the millions of defense but not 1 cent for tribute. He also repealed the very unpopular whiskey tax, although he eventually had to bring it back, and he allowed the Sedition Act to expire. That was, of course, very unpopular legislation under the Adams administration, where it was illegal to talk poorly about the government, and he also pardoned everybody who'd been in jail from it. That's where the president has the ability to just forgive any crimes that people have committed. Jefferson also really wanted to reduce the size of the federal budget. That's the amount of money that the federal government has to spend every year. So with this cut in taxes, you have to cut the amount of money that the government has to spend as well. And Jefferson was okay with that because he really felt like the government that governs least governs best. So he really focused on local governments and on making sure the federal government was only as big as what it needed to be in order to protect the people. He cut down on government spending. He believed in an economic idea known as laissez-faire. It's a French term that means let alone or hands off. He also believed that the government should play a small role in economic affairs. That's in direct contrast with Alexander Hamilton, who had the national bank where the federal government was taking taxes and then taking that money and loaning it to people and really encouraging it to build factories and manufacturing and shipping, because he really felt like that would create more opportunities for Americans and make the United States more competitive globally. Jefferson didn't support all of that, so he really worked hard to make sure that the government was not playing a role in economic affairs of everyday citizens. Laissez-faire is just very much let the market take care of it. People will make up what they need to make. They'll sell what they need to sell, and the government doesn't have to be involved in the economy. Still more changes that Jefferson makes. Many of the ideas that the Federalists wanted were to promote manufacturing and trading. We talked about how he wanted to do more to promote agriculture. He believed that the country needed to stop fighting with each other. In his inaugural speech, he talked about how we are all Federalists and we are all Republicans, and he really felt like that should be a turning point where Americans can sort of move past the bipartisan politics. Even though he did have this sweeping momentum where Democratic Republicans took control of the House and of the Senate in 1800, when he could, he still allowed a lot of Federalists within the executive branch to keep their job, and at the advice of his Secretary of Treasury, Robert Gallatin, he even kept the Bank of the United States that Alexander Hamilton had fought so hard to create.